one of the things that I have learned about identity is that our identities are formed by by the stories that we're told from the time we're very small. Um, the story of how you came to be, the story of how you were born, or if you're adopted, the story of how you came to us, and or uh, just the birth story, or just also your ancestors, where you come from, your history, and those are the beginnings of the building blocks of our identity. And it doesn't matter what the stories are, in terms of them being building blocks, as long as they're true. Um, and if they're not, and in my case, they were not, it's like, it's like my identity was being formed around something that was um, like empty in some way, or inaccessible, or just like the image that I have when I think about it is like of an empty husk, like of a pod, like the pod looks complete. It looks like if you looked at it from a distance, it would look like a complete pod, but it's actually a husk. And so having to um and also being a storyteller, like having spent my life creating narratives, and in
Right.
part creating narratives out of that original narrative, so that these stories of um, you know why were my parents so unhappy with each other. I had all sorts of narratives around that. And they're actually traceable because they were published, right? So it's not just that I think I had narratives around them. I know I did. It's like I wrote a story about my father, that was a personal history piece in the New Yorker, that was really my way of trying to understand what I always felt was this sorrow that he had. Um, and I attributed it in large part to his unhappiness with my mother, but also to having been widowed in his 30s, um, which was something that I didn't know growing up. And when I reached the age that he had been when he was widowed, I thought, my God, that is so young to go through something like that. And I want to know everything I can about it. And so I wrote, and he was already gone. And I wrote this piece that was my attempt to try to understand my dad. And when I was done with that piece, which was a hell of a thing to write because it had to pass muster with New Yorker fact checkers, but also the principles were dead. So it was a piece that took me the better part of a year to research and write. And I really thought, well, now I've solved that. Now I understand the source of my father's depression, his addiction to painkillers, his, this. And when I made this discovery, I realized that the narratives that I had fashioned, it's not that they weren't true, they just weren't the whole truth. I didn't have the whole picture. And so I had spent my life, writing novels that were often, always really revolving around a secret of some kind. Why? I mean, I could have told you, yeah, I guess that's a theme of mine, but I didn't know why. And I wrote memoirs. I was never going to write any memoirs. I started out as a novelist. I was a fiction writer, and then I found myself being drawn to writing memoir. And I think that was also a form of a kind of unconscious need to excavate, and somehow knowing that there were things that I didn't know, and that storytelling. I mean, I really do think that storytelling, and having been able to become a writer and have spent my life doing that, is in large part what saved me, and what kind of allowed me to continue to move forward and deepen, even though there was something that was really missing and unclear and murky.